I'm Max, and I'm sitting here together with Achill, and we're going to talk about the topic of shyness. So we both have a lot of experience working with clients who suffer under shyness, and we help them overcome their shyness. So for you, the value of this podcast talk is to better understand why humans or people have shyness and how to overcome them. So I'm first going to introduce myself briefly. I'm Max, I'm 40 years, and I'm working as a psychologist and therapist for 14 years, and I help clients with all kinds of personal topics, and one of them is low confidence or shyness in general, and this is basically my experience.
And I'm Achill. I'm a conscious confidence coach, and I started this because I struggled with this topic myself in my personal life, and I realized a lot of other people have a certain degree of shyness, especially when it comes to people from different cultural backgrounds like myself. I'm half Indian, half German. So I started making content on this online, and at some point I built quite a big audience there on Instagram, around 75,000 people following me, and I love talking about this topic, and so I made a business out of it. At some point I started coaching people one-on-one, and for the last 4 years I've really focused on the South Asian diaspora, mostly men from South Asian backgrounds who live abroad in the US or Europe. So that's what I'm going to bring in today.
Great. So we're going to start, and I'm going to ask Achill about his experiences. So Achill, what would you say? What is like your personal background, your personal motivation to start this topic of conscious confidence? And yeah, how did you came to the point that you want to help others?
I guess I thought I have to do something, and I tried everything. I tried everything else under the sun. I said, first of all, let me just do the traditional path of being a good student, which is kind of what was expected of me growing up in an Indian household, you could say. And so I went on this academic path of studying, getting great grades, getting to the best universities. And at some point I realized I can't do this. I can't be an academic. I don't want to just study and read all my life. I want to make a change. And so I started flirting with the idea of making films. I thought that was a great way to really discover the world, to understand the world, and also to share your insights. If it's a very complex, deep insight, you can't really even put it into words and formulas. I thought film is a medium where you can actually share very deep, complex insights. So I played with that for a few years. Then I realized it's not really possible to earn money with documentary film. And I was into documentary film. I could not imagine doing fiction film. So I switched from filmmaking to marketing. That was not a very fulfilling career. Kind of felt like selling out and making art for products. And so I started doing software engineering. That was like the third or fourth career already, and I was already in my late 20s at that point. And I realized I really like coding, and I like solving specific kinds of problems with code, mainly social related problems. And I started building applications, software for making it easier for people to connect, to interact, especially in the real world. And that has always been a big fascination of mine, to be honest, to just connect with people in real world settings and especially meet strangers. It's always been a bit of a dream for me to have that skill. And in my 20s, I worked very hard to build that skill because I didn't have it naturally. My upbringing was not very conducive to going out and to being extroverted and talking to strangers a lot. So I taught myself how to do that. And then I said, I'm going to build software that helps other people who want to learn that skill. So I built software, but it turns out software itself is not enough for people to make that kind of change. To get rid of shyness, often they need much more than just a tool. They usually need some kind of mentor, some kind of relatable figure that really pushes them, that tells them what to do and holds them accountable. So I naturally kind of slipped into that role because I said, here's the tool. And they said, yeah, that's not enough. I need you to show me. I need you to tell me. I need you to come with me. So I ended up coming with people, showing them how to actually initiate conversations. And I think that's also how you found out about me. That's how you discovered me. I was on the television with that program where I told people how to start conversations. And at some point I started charging for it, and that's the story.
Amazing. Okay, so you have indeed a personal background. You're not like a natural extrovert or someone who overcomes shyness very easily and naturally connects with strangers, but it's a personal topic of yourself. And it's interesting to see how you step by step kind of got dragged into it by your clients. Like you didn't have the vision by yourself to start being a coach, but they asked you for it. And what would you say? Why did you kind of focus on like Indian or Southeast Asian men mainly, especially here in Berlin, right? Like expatriates working here. Why do you think they are like the most relevant target group for you?
There's a couple of reasons. The first one is I felt like I can relate to their problems. I understand them better than most other coaches because I have that background myself. But it's a bit more tricky because I'm half Indian genetically. So I grew up in Germany with an Indian mother, which is quite different from growing up in India and coming over here, which is the people that I work with most of the time. But it's enough to understand that side because I was educated more as an Indian than a German. You know, my mother was definitely the more influential part in my upbringing, and my father was also quite bought into many aspects of the Indian traditions. They actually met through an Indian meditation ashram, through a meditation community. So I grew up over here, and it was almost a bit mysterious to me what my identity really was. Because I had all this Indian stuff happening at home, and then outside of home, in my school, there were no other Indians at the time. There were not a lot of Indians back then. But my mother made sure to always take us back to India. We always had Indian guests, and so we learned the language a little. We learned the meditation very early on. And only later I realized that this Indian heritage, this Indian influence, was actually a bit of a obstacle, quite a big challenge for me to then go out and relate to other people. As a kid, you don't think about that, but later on I reflected and I realized my parents, and especially my mother, had really kind of shielded me from this outside world because she said those are not compatible values. The kids in school, especially when you start seeing young guys kind of going out and partying and drinking, that was all haram basically. And it kind of created this separation between me and the society around me. And so even though I didn't know it, I experienced many of the similar challenges that Indian men that come over here experience now. That was one of the big reasons I said, I'm gonna focus on that. Also, I felt like it's just an underserved niche. There's not a lot of people who focus on these special problems of people with this kind of background, often with certain conservative family values, with this expectation of getting an arranged marriage, so you don't really have to socialize that much, you don't really have to talk to the other gender, because marriage is kind of taken care of. All these problems are pretty specific and pretty small, niche-y. I said, I'm gonna just focus on that because no one else is. And I realized, wow, a lot of people out there spread across the globe have these problems, and they resonate so strongly because no one else talks about it. And so that's when my Instagram started blowing up, and I started realizing, okay, this is a latent condition that is kind of under the surface and no one talks about it. I can tap into that.
Okay, great. So it sounds like Indian men have it even harder, much harder than people from like a Western society or from Germany especially. So since they have less experience through their culture and upbringing, basically, that everything is taken care of basically, and they never gain a lot of own experiences and they don't challenge themselves during their upbringing. So
it's hard to say, right? Whether it's ultimately harder or not, I can't make that judgment.
Okay.
You know, because it's so hard to say when you take everything into account. There are lots of difficulties on all sides, right? It's like some people say, it's harder to be a woman than a man in the world. I guess might be, might not be. I'm not the person who will say, yeah, for sure. It's so complicated. If you want to add that up over the course of history, yes, there were certain times where it was definitely worse to be a woman. But if you look at everything together, it's so complicated to say that. So for me, it's just not something I find helpful to say, so I don't say it. And I think it's not possible to tally up all the difficulties and all the advantages of being in certain groups. But it's certain that women have different challenges than men, and it's certain that Indian men have different challenges than white men. So I would qualify that a little bit.
Okay, interesting. So what would you say? What was like the main goal of, let's say, the average customer or client that you helped? So did he have like a specific goal, like going on more dates or approaching more easily people from the other gender, set up dates, or was it more like in general being better at networking opportunities, like for their own career, be more open in general as a personality? What would you say? What was like the main specific goal of your clients?
It's certainly all of the above, but the main thing that they usually boil it down to in their own minds, that's how they would usually formulate it, is building social confidence. Feeling more themselves in social situations. Feeling like they don't have to hide parts of themselves, feeling like they belong and that they can show themselves. I think that subsumes it best. That's the summary of what they want. And then under that, all these categories which you mentioned fall, which is business opportunities, dating opportunities, getting even better with talking to their own friends and family, having a social circle here, building real friendships. But the core is really feeling more socially confident and feeling free to say what they think, to not have this huge block between what's going on in here and what comes out.
Okay, so would you say it is because of the culture or because they are like from a different culture that they kind of block themselves or wear a mask or try to overthink how do others view me? Am I good enough? Like, or despite or although I'm different from my cultural background, maybe I can get rejected more easily, or people don't understand me easily, and therefore I have to kind of adapt to the German culture. What would you say? What's like in the mind of these people? How do they block their own authenticity?
Yeah.
What would you say?
I think there's a bit of a selection effect going on where I end up working with the men that actually focused a lot on their careers. And that's also what made it possible for them to come to another country. Because if you don't have a high-paying job, it's pretty hard to actually get the visa and stay here and really create a life here. So I end up working a lot with IT specialists who just prioritize their career, who spend most of their time working on technical problems, hanging out with technical people. And the culture, it didn't penalize that kind of behavior much, because the culture back home said, that's okay, because it doesn't really matter if you go to parties or not. You're going to get married based on your socioeconomic status and also on your looks through arranged marriage systems. So there was not a huge reason for them to really become social and to learn how to express themselves in social situations. It was important that they do good work. So I think that's the main thing that ends up blocking them. They built a life focused on economic stability and job success. And it's only natural that if you spend 90% of your time on work-related problems, you're not going to develop the skills that are needed for private social connections.
I see. So what would you say, did the clients that you had basically understand the structural problems that they had, or did they rather stay on the surface level and said, hey, I just need to learn some skills, I just need to train certain situations to overcome my shyness, or did they really understand the structural problems of their shyness? What would you say?
I would say no. Only after a lot of work and a lot of introspection, only after going through a few months of training, they start to see the deeper structural problems. They, on the surface, and that's also a bit of a sad thing about the whole coaching business, on the surface they're very aware of the problem. They are aware that they don't get dates. They are aware that their skipping on promotions because, people don't take them seriously at work sometimes. They're very aware of these surface problems, and that's how I also market myself, and that's what I talk about in my content. When I talk about the more deeper belief systems and insecurity complexes, that's something no one really wants to see, and that's something most people don't really understand. It's kind of boring also, right? So today hopefully we'll get to the bottom of that, but very few people will watch a long video like this, and a lot of people will say, wow, that's interesting when I talk about a dating problem, or when I say, yeah, as a brown man, you should not go up to white women and talk to them. Like, that's a hook that would get a lot of people interested, even though it's ridiculous. And I would only say it to get attention, because it triggers a certain insecurity that a lot of Indian men have, which is they should not talk to white people here. On the surface, these dating-related problems are present, and usually people don't take the time, don't have the peace of mind even to sit for one day and look really deep and connect those surface problems to the lifestyle problems that cause this low confidence, which is usually, a certain lack of purpose, a certain lack of direction in life, a lack of appreciating holistic personal development, because that's ultimately where confidence comes from. You work on your life and create it the way you want it, the piece of art that your life is. You can mold it. Those men that I work with are really well-paid, successful professionals, and the rest of the world says you don't have to change much. Like, their job, their boss doesn't say they have to change much. The market doesn't say they have to change much. Everyone is happy, except deep inside, even the family says, it's all right, just keep going, we'll get you someone through arranged marriage. Just in themselves, there's this one voice that says, actually, I don't want arranged marriage. And so I kind of dock onto that voice and I say, hey, yeah, if you really don't want, then maybe you should do something about it. But that force is, in most cases, not strong enough to lead them to those fundamental changes. Those are risky changes as well, because that usually means actually doing what they really love doing in their profession, which is often not what they're doing currently. Oftentimes they maximized for economic success in that way, where they even do a job that they don't actually enjoy that much. In the back of their head, there will be like this idea, this dream that someday they will actually open a business. But often that never happens, because that is one of those risky things that you need to do to be authentic, to be fully yourself in a conversation with a stranger.
I think you told me that you have created some video courses to basically prepare people, also to select people who put in effort before the real coaching actually starts. So maybe you can talk about that, what you teach in these courses and what they are basically all about, and what kind of the volume of these courses is, how much effort would be needed for clients.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's a free community that I put. I can actually link it under the video, where I have 4 different free courses. The first one is actually just about voice and speaking skills, because I found out that a lot of people are struggling just with articulating themselves, not even on a psychological level, but on a physical level, opening their mouth, actually using their diaphragm, using the volume that you have in your chest to produce that sound. That alone is a big blocker for many people to be perceived as confident. It's very much on the outside. It's very much a superficial surface layer thing, but it's much easier to work on that than to work on the psychological stuff right away. So the first course that I have is just a course on speaking more clearly and using your voice more effectively, also speaking a bit louder. And that course, it takes like maybe just 2 hours or 1.5 hours to go through. You have lots of exercises in there. And it led me to create another course, which is more on the deeper level, which is more about really finding out what you want to do in life, actually developing better habits, kind of an audit of your lifestyle and comparing where you want to be versus where you are right now. And then there's another course on starting conversations. So that's where it becomes more practical. And I have one course there, which is everything you need to know to make that very first approach in your life, that very first social interaction to a stranger that you've never met. I think 90% of the men out there have never really done that, right? Just go up to a stranger in a social setting, in a bar or in a park, and say hello. That course just prepares you for that. And then once you've done that, there's a fourth course, which is doing your first 10 interactions. So maybe a week where you say, this week, I'm just going to start conversations with 10 different people. And there's a course where I show exactly how you can ramp up the intensity, because I will not tell you, you have to talk to someone and get their number and arrange a date. The first time, it's going to be more like, make a compliment and just leave. Say thank you and leave after that. So that way you can have this kind of very smooth ramp up to having real conversations. Yeah, those courses are all free. And that's kind of one way that I filter out those very few people who are serious. Because as I said earlier, most people, yeah, they don't really want to do the work. And it's very sad, but I have to accept it. So I put out these free courses, and if people go through the free courses and they actually enjoy it, they can contact me, and then I will be able to work with them because they're probably able and willing to do the work because they went through those videos already.
Do you have a lot of clients where you say, okay, it would make sense for them to see a psychologist or a therapist first to basically work on themselves, to prepare themselves? Would you agree that it's a topic from your perspective that there could be a lot of value?
I think so. I don't know too much about therapy, but it's certainly one option to get clarity. I think therapy is not so great for making people take massive action, which is necessary if you already know what you want and you just want to know how to do it. In that case, I believe coaching is much better. But if you don't know what you want, if you feel like you look into your head and it's just chaos, and you can't write down your goal for this year because you don't even take the time to sit down for half a day to write down what you really want. And if you don't do that, if you don't take a half day, well, guess what? You're just going to be running around doing what other people want from you, because there are so many people who want something from you, who are trying to sell you something and pulling you in all directions. So if you're in a position where, yeah, you can't even set a direction, I think much deeper level work is needed, and therapy is certainly one of the great ways we have as a society just to force someone to sit there and actually think about their life and not get distracted. Because in that room, when you're sitting with a therapist like you, yeah, you can't just pull out your phone and you can't just start putting music on. You have to confront things that the therapist, an experienced therapist, brings up to make yourself feel more clear about what you want in life and how to get it. And then once you know what you want in life and how you get it, I think that's when the coach is more suited, because the coach has much more flexibility. He's not just talking to you, right? He's not required to always stay neutral. He's not required to just, kind of bring things out of you. He can put things into you. He can teach you a skill, and he can go out with you. He can actually meet you in person. He can meet you anywhere in the world and do things together. And that's where I think the value of coaching lies. I wonder how you help, as a therapist, people with shyness, and if you also experienced it like this, where there's a certain limit to what you can do as a therapist, and after some point you have to kind of send them into the real world, and that's something as a therapist you probably cannot really observe so closely, and you cannot accompany them there so much.
Yeah, it's true. There's different ways of therapy, there's different methods and approaches. So of course in behavioral therapy there would be actually some in-field training, like confrontation therapy. Basically you go into certain situations, so it would work kind of similar like the coaching that you describe and that you do yourself, but this is just one version. If you look at shyness or low confidence, there's some social anxiety at the root of it in most cases. And if you see the anxiety, you can think about what you want instead of the anxiety. Do you want security? Do you want confidence? Do you want optimism? And anxiety is always directed towards the future. So you just have an expectation that causes your anxiety. You think that things will go bad. You think about what will others think about me when I behave in a certain way, or if I approach someone and don't say the right things, They might not like me, or reject me. And this is basically the mind game that you have to look at as a psychologist in a therapy. Mm-hmm. What is in the person's head? What is happening when they think about approaching someone? Mm-hmm. And you really have to look very closely and see what is in the head of the client. Then you can understand what his inhibitions are, how he limits himself, what his mindset looks like, how he creates these feelings of anxiety.
Interesting. How do you practically apply this, for example, to a guy in my target audience who maybe has in his head this thought that as an Indian, I should not talk to locals in Europe? Maybe that's one of the things that my clients have in their head a lot, right? This is just a thought. I cannot do this because I'm Indian and I'm culturally different, I'm skin color different. Now, how would you deal with that kind of thought as a therapist?
I would, first of all, let him articulate the thought very clearly. A lot of people have it in the unconscious mind. They have it somewhere in the back of the head. They have the voice of their mother or father in the back of the head, and it's not actually their own voice. They have not created it by themselves. They have learned it from someone else or from their culture or from the peer group or whoever, And this is the interesting thing. It's not authentic. It's learned. It's programmed into their mind. And this is something that can be reprogrammed as well. But first of all, it needs to be conscious for them. So first of all, I would ask them to articulate that clearly. And I would write it down. Maybe I would let them write it down. So it's absolutely crystal clear to them. These are my thoughts. And they cause me to feel and to think in a certain way and to look in certain situations in a certain way. And this is the only reason, because they have this attitude and these thoughts. So this is the point where I can start questioning these thoughts with the clients. And this is when some cognitive, like restructuring techniques can be implemented or applied. And I can ask for exceptions to these thoughts. I can ask for examples of other Indian men that have successfully found or dated with confidence, let's say Western or white women or whoever, or basically found new jobs or have set boundaries towards their boss or something, not played their role in a certain way. So we can look for exceptions to these thoughts and the rules that they say, these are like the true belief, it's a truth, and I cannot, change it. I cannot change it. That is per se the definition of a belief. I believe it's a truth. Yeah. And once they stop believing it's the truth, but they see, there's actually exceptions. And why, if others have an exception, why could not I have the exception? This is basically when you can start cracking these internal rules and they think about it and they open up, And it's very interesting. I'm not a classical behavioral or cognitive therapist. I'm more a systemic or a hypnosystemic therapist in a way. So I have the assumption that there are different sides inside the person. There's this very dominant, shy, not authentic part that has been programmed from culture, from their parents, from their peer group, the group that they belong to, maybe here in Berlin with other Indian people who affirm each other basically in their beliefs. But I believe since a person came to therapy and is struggling with their shyness, I see that there's also another side. And then there's an internal conflict between different sides. And he wants to break out of it. He wants to find solutions, but he cannot see them because this cultural side with these beliefs is so dominant. It's blurring his mind, And the value of the therapy, what I try, is to activate this other side who wants to break out. We have to find it and activate it and then put the focus on it.
That's a beautiful way of saying it. Like activating a certain voice inside of you that's already there, but it's a little too low volume. In the back, it's hidden between all different kinds of voices. And I think that's also what we do with creating content in a way, right? What we do by putting content out, we amplify certain voices in people's heads. Because a lot of people think about this stuff here, but it's in the back of their head and they can't really put a finger on it. It's too complex. And by having someone on the internet that speaks about it, they're like, oh, there's a voice inside of me that also wants to go on this process. And we amplify. That's like one definition of an influencer or a content creator in my eyes, a voice amplifier. And I like to think of myself as someone who amplifies the voices of people that they also want to have amplified, and that there's no one else to really amplify.
Exactly. You know, it's not the side that is culturally aligned with the Indian culture or that is shy, that is triggered by your content or that would go to me as a therapist and seek for help. It's the side who wants to change. This is the side who is triggered and looks for a way out. They just look for a solution. They just cannot find it themselves because, as I said, they don't see it and they cannot see it because they are dominated by this culturally aligned, very shy, low confident side that wants to just fit in their roles as they have learned and as they have been educated to. And therefore, this is basically the way in the therapy to reveal this new side and to balance it out with a currently dominant, lower confident, shy in their role side, and to balance it out so they can give more focus to see it more clearly, and then they can listen to it, listen to the thoughts that this side might be listen to the thoughts that this side might offer to them. You know, it's like an angel and a devil on your shoulders. You know, one is talking to you like this, the other is telling you like that, and it's basically an attention thing. And then you can, with this new side that you kind of foster, and as a therapist that you help him to focus on, you can basically find new thoughts and solutions actually. And you can build out the side and ask the side, hey, how would you react? The authentic you basically react in these kind of social situations. What would you say? What would you feel? How would you act? So I believe, as kind of a systemic therapist, I believe all the resources are already there. I don't even like the term of personal development because I think it's rather like finding the sides that you want to develop into already are inside of you. You just have to activate them. You just have to reveal them. And I say in certain contexts, you can already show a confident behavior, a not so shy behavior. You know, everyone is behaving different. For example, when they go on vacation, or if they go into a nightclub or into a different social setting, they can be less shy or they can be more shy, you know, depending on the context. So you already see that there's a gradual difference between your shyness in different situations. And you are a different version of yourself in different contexts and settings. And this is the proof that you are not set with 100% shyness, but you can have 80%, 70%, 50% shyness. That means you can control it. You can control it. And once you understand this, you can take the full responsibility. You have to understand, I'm 100% responsible for my shyness and I can control it. And this is what you learn in therapy.
What was it for you that actually made you decide to work with these kinds of patients and specialize kind of on this topic? Was there a specific story that led you to, I guess, specialize?
I would say that low confidence is something most psychological mental disorders have in common. Because if you're depressed, if you have other kinds of anxieties, if you have kind of alcohol abuse or anything, there's kind of a low confidence at the back of it. It's lacking in these kind of people. You know, high confidence is a very strong resilience factor in a lot of people. So most clients I have are dealing with lower confidence, and therefore shyness, in my experience, I'm also treating a lot of expatriates. Of course, when you don't speak the language of the country, and in Germany, it's especially hard. It's not an easy language, for sure. You are kind of limiting yourself, and of course, this affects your confidence if you cannot speak in the natural language of the country, you know. So there is a certain challenge, and you have to have a very, very strong confidence. It's like you're challenged every day, just talking, you know, asking someone for the right direction, or, you know, making a small talk. And this is something what I see, how people really, limit themselves and eventually develop certain kind of disorders. And therefore, in every therapy, I'm looking at increasing and improving the confidence of the people. And I see a lot of people are kind of introverted as well. Like, I'm rather introverted person myself, so I totally understand it. But my main resource, I would say, is still that I'm very, very open-minded. You know, if you're very open-minded, that means that you kind of can counter shyness in a certain way. You can give more attention to new people. And there's one genetic factor, you know, and research has shown that 30% of your shyness is kind of inherited, genetically predetermined. So this means like you're more sensitive towards new, unfamiliar people, you know, and this is kind of 30% of your shyness, and 70% is learned, or the way you're educated, or depending on the experiences you gained. Of course, if you got bullied in school, if you got a lot of negative feedback from others for your appearance or the way you talk, and people reject you a lot, or your parents were very strict with you and didn't let you speak and just gave you orders and you had to follow them, of course, how can you create this confidence? And how can you be more confident and then therefore less shy? Of course, if you got a lot of positive feedback and reinforcement, you can actually even become overconfident, you know? This is like basically the other not normal, not healthy direction that you can, this can lead into a kind of arrogance or something like this. But this is something you just have to find out for yourself. Where did I learn it? When did it start? Am I more sensitive maybe towards new people? But even if yes, it's not your excuse, because it's only 30%. And 70% is much more. Therefore, you can change it. If you take the responsibility and say, hey, it's not the fault of my parents. They didn't, you know, help me a lot with my shyness or my confidence. Okay, they didn't know better maybe. And also my friends at school, or the people who bullied me, or my former boss or my former partner, who kind of took my confidence. It doesn't help you to go into the victim mindset. You have to always take full responsibility. And that's the main factor for me for a successful therapy. They say, I own it 100%. It doesn't matter what others did in my life. I'm here and now. The past might have been hurtful, might not have been helpful, but I'm here now and I want to change it. I'm suffering. I'm very motivated to change because I want to have a different life. And I want to have a different version of myself. I don't want to stick with this side of me, which is only a side of you, and never discover and experience the other side of me. And this is what I'm curious about. This is what I really want for myself. Be more balanced, be more flexible. You don't need to be 100% confident or never shy again. This is not the point of therapy. The therapy helps you be more free, be more flexible, to be able to have different options, to act in different ways. This is the main value of therapy with all kinds of topics. You cannot be 100% never anxious about anything, or not 100% never depressed again. Therapy helps you to be more flexible, to see options in front of you. Hey, I have experience with this, I have experience with that. So I'm very kind of experienced with shyness now. Okay, you can always frame it like more positive, more lightly. Hey, I'm very experienced with shyness, you know. This can also have some benefits in certain situations, so I can protect myself better, you know. It's good to have it, you know. Some people should have it more, actually. I could be a shyness coach, kind of, you know. You can frame it in all kinds of ways, you know, to take it more lightly, to feel, you know, take it not too personal, your shyness. You don't need to take it too personal. But you can say, hey, okay, I'm a shyness expert now, and I want to train another side of me to be more confident, you know. So, okay, maybe I'm only 20% confident right now, and I want to have 30%. I don't want 100%. It's not how it works. It's a gradual development. Say, hey, how can I get to 30% confidence? What would I do different in this and that hypothetical situation if I had 30% confidence or 40% confidence? And then you do step by step. People want quick results. People don't have patience anymore. And this is what you told as well with your clients. They want quick results. They want it just solved. They want to pay for it and get it solved. You know, you do the work for me, or you tell me and I do it, and then it's done. They don't understand that it's really a long process and a lot of patience is needed. There's no quick fix for a personality.
Do you think that one can change one's confidence without changing one's life? So let's say someone comes to you and they say, I'm shy, I don't know how to talk, and do you think that person could become more talkative, more confident, more extrovert, and develop the side without also changing their habits, changing their lifestyle, maybe making some changes in their career? Like I said earlier, where I felt like the people that are shy and insecure, they usually are insecure for a reason, which is that they're not super happy with their life and their choices that they made in their life, and their routines and their habits and their everyday decisions. So oftentimes I feel like that goes hand in hand. If you want to become more confident, you actually have to do something else in your life. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, there's different pathways, I would say. Yes, you could change a lot. The question is always, is it authentic to you? Or do you have to play a fake role? Do you have to fake being confident, but you don't feel it actually? That's a big question for the people, because if it's not natural for them, it's not right, it's not sustainable in a way. So you always have to look at who the person really is and what's in their natural boundaries. And if it's possible that they can never be an introvert cannot be an extrovert like that. It's not happening that. There's some gradual improvement, but there are set boundaries for that. And they don't need to be like that. Maybe it's just the result or the goal of the therapy that they care less about what other people think, that they can be more with themselves and be rather with a focus at other people, how they look at them, or how to deal with rejection, for instance, how to take things not personal. This is something that can be more easily worked on, and that would actually help them to be more flexible and to approach more people eventually. And this depends really on the person, and this is what I have to look at in the therapy. Who is this person? Like, what is kind of his authentic self? What are his boundaries? And then we can see what aspects of the shyness we can work on. Is it just like a behavioral change? Is it like a skill kind of enhancement through training? Or is it something in the beliefs level, so change beliefs and crack up beliefs? Or is it on the values level, the mindset in general? Or is it something on the identity level? I'm this and I'm that, and this is how I am, and I will never gonna change? Or is he having kind of a growth mindset and thinking, I can develop in a certain way while still being authentically me? And of course, this is a big question. Let's assume the person is not living an authentic life. Then it might be like a persona that he's living, that he's having the mindset of, as I said, of a certain side of himself. And there might be a more extroverted side. And if he just could crack one belief, hey, I'm not good enough for other people. I never get respected from other people. People will reject me. If this would be his limiting belief and it would disappear, and he would be a naturally extroverted person actually who would love to talk to people and therefore get good feedback because he's so authentic. People love authentic people, you know? And in my experience, people get rather rejected when they are not authentic actually, because people feel and smell if you're like fake or something, and then you get rather rejected, you know. So this is basically what needs to be found out. What is the authentic version? How can you do authentic approaches?
How do you actually define what is authentic and what is not? Because there's so many voices, we talked about it, and we never really know whether this voice is my mother's voice or some society or some guy who bullied me in school. And let's say I want to become confident and I say, yeah, but I think I have to become fit. I have to become muscular for that. It's not clear if this is the authentic voice that says that or some other voice. How do you navigate that?
Look, we all have been children. And as a child, we were kind of not very programmed. We were very authentic in a way. Mm-hmm. Would you agree?
I guess, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, and as children, we were very open-minded. We were very curious about the world, and we had it very easy to connect with other children, to play with them, to approach even adults, you know, and say, hey, I want this, or I want that, or let's play, or something like that, you know? Yeah. And so it is inside of every one of us. Curiosity, openness, because we had that before we were educated in a certain way. And everyone has kind of a childish, very easygoing playful side. And you see, the people who have it easiest to approach other people are very playful people, kind of naturals in a way, extroverted people. And therefore, I believe it's inside of everyone. And this is kind of the authentic core. The authentic core would not have a lot of thoughts. We learn through our life a lot of thoughts that we take in from outside or that we create out of experiences ourselves. So this is something, I would look for the authentic side of the person, I would try to go back in their life, in the history, and ask them, has there been a time, have there been some negative experiences with rejections from others or some bad experiences that have really, and after this experience, you changed your mind and you limited yourself more. And this is a hint where people themselves understand, oh, I have not always been like this, I have learned it. And if I would not have had this experience, I maybe would have been a different person now, you know? And this is how we find out if the person is authentic, if the attitude is authentic or not.
A voice, for example, in me right now says, I want to become much more strong. I want to lift much more weight. I want to become more muscular. Somehow I'm not sure if that is me authentic, because my child me definitely didn't have that thought, right? But I guess I do really want to work out. I really want to become fit. I had a phase like last few months where I was just coding a lot and I didn't really take care of my body. So even though my child definitely didn't think of working out, I feel like my authentic self wants that. But how would you as a therapist determine whether this is my authentic self or whether it's maybe actually Instagram telling me I should be more muscular?
You know, what you tell me is kind of a strategy for something else. So there is some need or some value or some kind of purpose behind it. And this is what you have to look at. The same with shyness. Shyness is kind of a behavioral strategy. Like you do something in a certain social situation or you don't do something, you know? It's just a behavior. And if you look behind, what's the desire of the person? Is it some relationship need that he has, or is it about self-confidence kind of need in this moment? So what is behind this? And this is the question that you can ask yourself. Of course, it's perfectly human. We all humans have kind of very similar desires, and you have to ask yourself, what is behind this? Is it for others or is it for yourself?
Well, in this case, it's hard to say because it's both, right? I want to be more confident. I want to be more attractive. That's certainly for others, but it's also good for me. So for me, it's very hard to say in this case.
Yeah. Yeah. Then the question is, if you had it, just imagine yourself, you're in the perfect shape that you dream of.
Your shape, basically.
Thank you. What would change in your mind? Would you say, okay, now it's enough, and now I'm perfectly confident it's solved? Or would you say, oh, maybe I want more, or I want something different now, or I look for another area where I need to grow now, and it's never enough? This is the question. Or do you feel like, oh, I just need to achieve something specific, to look in a very specific way, and then it's 100% enough for me, then I'm super happy, all my needs are fulfilled? What would you say? This is like the question you have to ask yourself.
Cool. That's very helpful, actually. And I guess you can always deceive yourself, but yeah, that's when a therapist comes in, and I guess that's when you feel like you're not being truthful with yourself. Maybe that's when they come to you and say, actually, let me get a neutral outside perspective, right?
Exactly. This is what people sometimes need, of course, because they believe themselves.
Yeah.
People tend to believe themselves, their own thoughts, because they come from themselves. They don't know if they are authentic or not. You know, everyone has this kind of self-bias. So it really helps to talk to psychologists or to experts to get the outside perspective and to get just asked these kind of questions that they couldn't ask themselves because they are so immersed with themselves. And in general, this is also for the topic of shyness. Let's say you have overcome your shyness, like you're 100% confident. Are you then happy? Is this then what you really wanted? Or will you find a new area to work on, and it's actually never enough. And there's something else that makes you truly unhappy, and this is what we all want, we want to find happiness, find our purpose, have a fulfilled life, whatever, but, maybe people just have this never-ending loop and finding new challenges for themselves that they might overcome or not. Or maybe some people just want to stay in challenges and actually never overcome them. That's also a possibility, that you're self-sabotaging yourself to actually find happiness. And this is why there is no one-fits-all solution for shyness, confidence, and many others. But there's very individual limiting factors that you have to understand and then to find the right methods.
But isn't that a never-ending loop where you just want more and more? Isn't that the fundamental nature of human life, that we are never fully satisfied? We always want something else. And once I have my dream body, I will want more money, and then I will want a family, and then I will want this and that. I guess that's like the predicament. That's the human condition. And that's why I always feel like when you talk about therapy and we talk about all this deeper stuff, you kind of get led back to very existential questions. You get led back to philosophy in the end. What is happiness? That's a philosophical question. It's almost a spiritual question. I guess it's something that leads a lot of people to religion and God and spirituality. For me, at least, that's like the way I think about it. I think human life is always limited. Always you feel like you want to have more. And so the only way to break out of that is to kind of distance yourself, detach a little bit from the material world and say, in this world of body, there's never going to be full happiness. I need to go into that other realm, into the spiritual world to find true bliss.
That's possible. That is, I think, why it's very popular, and it's getting increasingly popular to look into the spiritual world or kind of meditate more and detach yourself, as you said, from the material world and also your material self, material body. People have a desire, especially when their basic needs are fulfilled, for self-actualization. So that means you try or to look to fulfill and evolve your whole potential that you have. People want to have growth in all areas of their life. If they have stagnation or there's even a decline, people, or a lot of people, tend to suffer. You know, it's like a basic need. And the problem is you're getting older and there is a deterioration in many ways on the physical level, also maybe on the mental level as well. So this is something a lot of people are struggling with. That's why they have this anti-aging and extending your life kind of industry, longevity. I think it's getting very, very popular, and a lot of like the health products and that exist. It's a growing industry, and that's not for no reason. And the same as the spiritual kind of community and products are on a rise. So the demand is definitely there. I totally agree. And it's hard to say what is healthy and what is exaggerated, And again, the question is the person in balance? Is the person by themselves? Is it authentic? Or is it something that is indoctrinated from the outside? If it's really coming from the person themselves, I think it's fine. There is no coaching therapy needed necessarily. If it's something artificial that is not coming from themselves, it's because their parents have always had certain demands towards them to perform in a certain way, to reach certain positions. Hey, you have to become a doctor, or you need to make a career to make the family proud, or something like this. Then it's artificial, and then you have to question if that is your true way, or if you might lose energy and get burned out by pursuing that, because you're not emotionally kind of connected to this role and these demands, because they are not yours.
It's a beautiful note, I think, also to end on the sense of ownership, that you are the CEO of your life. You are the master of your life, and the things you do them because they're your own decisions. I think that's the ultimate fundamental change that most people that I experienced with shyness need to make in their lives, to take more ownership of their life. If people want to work with you on this topic, how do they best get in touch and find you?
Yeah, I will put down my website so people who are interested can book an appointment with me.
Fantastic. Max, thanks so much. It was really a pleasure.
Thank you, Achill. It was a pleasure for me as well. Nice talking to you.